just called you a nag in his own special way. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. All right, you guys, if you haven't noticed, we are having a very lovely time here in the Community Currency Virtual Retreat. We're just about to go live on Facebook again. And then I will tell you a little bit more about the man, the myth, the legend, Gene Bishop. All right, so Cheryl, will you give me the thumbs up if you see that we are live on Facebook, and hopefully it is showing the, so the way that I have it set up, you guys, is that it only shows the person speaking or the person who the computer is recognizing as all, you know, the volume is up basically. So do you guys feel a little bit more self-love and self-healing after listening to Kellie this morning? I know I do. Thank you again so much, Kellie. So grateful for your gifts, and I love that we're sharing them. So I appreciate you. Next up, we have Eugene, otherwise known as Gene, otherwise known as my husband, Bishop, coming to us live from just over there. I can hear myself echoing and everything. But so Gene is a pilot. He was a pilot at the age of 3. And if you don't believe me, ask his mother what happened on the soccer field when an airplane went by overhead. He could be headed to the goal and he would stop mid-field and look up to see whatever aircraft was flying by. So he has always had this aviation bug in his heart. And so as far as I'm concerned, he is the pilot extraordinaire. He's so incredibly safety conscious. I've never felt more safe in an aircraft than I do when he is the pilot. He is, let's see, an ex, well, not ex, I guess once an Army aviator, always an Army aviator. Say that 3 times fast. And oh my gosh, you didn't hear him. He said 3 times fast. Ah, hilarious. All right. Anyway, without further ado, he's going to tell us a little bit about how to grow your Facebook group organically. And I am super interested to hear what he has to say. So please welcome my husband, Gene Bishop. Hold that thought.
I got it. Okay. Where did everybody go? Now what?
You're off mute.
Obviously, yes. Hello, everybody.
Awesome. Put it down so that we're not staring at your chin.
Which one?
Here's such a good call. All right, so we're going to share a screen.
Okay.
New share or resume share.
Yeah,
yes, let's
sure,
resume
there,
share.
yeah.
We're going to start from the beginning.
That's always a good place to start.
Typically, sometimes. And then you can minimize this so that you don't see people, if I can figure out where the mouse is. There it is. So that you are up there. And then you should have complete control of your presentation just as normal. I will read chat comments to you so that you can know what's going on there, and we'll take it away.
All right. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. As my wife mentioned, my name is Gene Bishop, and she's asked me to talk a little bit about how to build a Facebook presence and grow a following. A little bit of background about me. As she mentioned, I'm a pilot. I'm also husband, brother, son, father, friend, soldier, officer, you name it. I've done a little bit of everything. And there will be a slide on that, but I'm going out of order, so I guess we'll just skip past that one. During this presentation, we're going to talk about types of leadership. I mean, because in order to develop that following, you have to be a leader of some sort. We'll discuss the common styles of leadership and go into that a little bit deeper. We're going to discuss how each style can impact the success or failures of your particular groups. Going to look at the advantages and disadvantages of the various types of groups. Their Facebook offers lots of different options, so we'll talk about each of those. Going to suggest methods of generating content and how to keep your members engaged and active, because that's a key to growth. Going to look at ways to find and engage new members, grow your audience. And going to talk about effective methods of moderating large social media groups, because oftentimes you can have a lot of people in your group, but the way you moderate that group can impact it severely, both positive and negative. So we'll look at some of the pitfalls and best practices from a moderating standpoint. Then we'll look at ways to turn your social media presence into a revenue generating career, or at least alternate source of income. There are a lot of people who make a lot of money strictly from their social media presence. So we'll take a look at some of those methods, and I'm going to invite a special guest speaker to comment on those. Okay, again, who am I? I'm a father to a 16-year-old daughter who, if she doesn't become a lawyer, I'll be shocked that she can argue with the best of them. I am a husband to my beautiful wife, Jamie, who you all know and love. Going on years. I'm a very proud son, brother, to an incredible sister. Lots and lots of friends, and I hope they feel the same of me. I spent 17 years flying for the United States Army in one form or another. During that time, I was a warrant officer, pilot, as Jamie mentioned. I run several large mentorship groups on Facebook. I'm a teacher of sorts, not formally, obviously, as this is somewhat awkward for me right now, but we'll work through it. I'm also a student. I'm of the belief that we're constantly learning as well as teaching. Doesn't matter who you are, where you are in life. There's something you have inside you that you can teach to other people, just as you can learn anything from anybody. Doesn't matter age, experience. We all have things to teach and we all have things to learn. As I alluded to, I'm the founder and sole administrator of 17 large Facebook groups with a combined membership of over 108,000 people. My largest single group has about 36,000, and then they go down from there. But lots and lots of people, very active groups. And so we'll talk a little bit about how I built those and how I found myself in this wonderful adventure. So followers is what we all look for as far as determining social media success. You're graded, if you will, by the number of viewers, members, followers you have. And these are people, most of whom you'll never meet, but they wind up viewing you almost as a celebrity of sorts, and they look up to you, and they will come to treat you as some sort of expert, whether in my case, whether it's deserved or not. Being a pilot and running so many large aviation groups, I'm constantly running into people on the road who are coming up to me saying, "You're Gene Bishop." And I don't know whether to duck or smile. So followers are very special people, and we'll learn about how they can have an impact on you. Your job as a content creator, as a social media influencer, as a group moderator or admin, is to be a leader. And we'll look into how you go about being a leader, all the various leadership styles, and how that can impact your group, organization, or I don't know what word I'm looking for. Why did I put followers before leaders? Excellent question. Before you can lead, you must first learn to follow. And I absolutely believe that. You cannot be a leader until you've been a follower. And there is an art to being a follower. There's a lot more to it than simply following the Pied Piper down the road. So what kind of leader are you? Well, there's 5 basic types, and depending on which Google site you look into, that'll list anywhere from 3 to 20. But the 5 basic types that I've come across in my experience are authoritarian, democratic, not related to the political party, managerial, laissez-faire, and visionary. An authoritarian leader is someone who is in charge. There's no doubt about who they are, no doubt about what they want. It's all them. It's their way or the highway. They very rarely will ask for opinions or input from other people. We had a lot of these people in the military, and so I'm fairly familiar with this type of leader. And some people may see them as somewhat of a dictator, but they're not. It's just their leadership style, and they're good at what they do most of the time. They're excellent decision makers. They can make decisions quickly under stressful conditions. They have no problem working under pressure. As a matter of fact, many of them thrive on pressure. The downside of this style is that people on the outside will view them occasionally as dictators. These tend to be the bosses versus the managers. They are very strong-willed type A personalities, and they will usually let you know in no uncertain terms how they expect things to be done and what they want done, and whether or not they accept your input is dependent on the individual, but more often than not, they want it done their way.
Honey, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Guys, you can hear me too? Okay, great. Just tell us a little bit about somebody in your life, like tell a story about an authoritarian leader in your experience. I can think of one from Alabama, and that might be a perfect example to share. Do you want me to?
Yeah, 'cause I'm drawing a blank.
Okay, so at the company that Gene and I both worked at the same company in Alabama, and at this company, the owner and operator, who inherited the business from his father, literally, I kid you not, was such an authoritarian leader and an amazing leader, by the way. So not angry or resentful or unkind boned in this man's body, but he definitely wanted to have a say in every single little decision that was being made in his company. He took this company from a $100,000 a year company, which was a lot when he inherited it in 1976, to when we worked there, it was making, or it was worth, I guess, over $1 billion. So
$1 billion.
or $5 billion. Sorry, my mistake. Point being, an extremely valuable company, and it was almost 100% his own doing. And so to lose the ability to control every single little decision was very, very scary for him. So he did things like, and I'm not kidding on any level in any way when I say this, he had to sign the paper that allowed me as one of his workers, and I was just a little peon person that worked in the purchasing department, to get an iPad. Like, so it took like 3 months for me to get an iPad, because that's not exactly the kind of decision that the owner and chief operating officer of the company should be making, right? That's for somebody in the managerial position to make. But he was very much an authoritarian figure in that he wanted to have a say in every single little decision that was being made in his company, and understandably so. So I think he's a great example of an authoritarian leader, or that story is anyway.
Definitely. Yeah, the iPad, I've told the iPad story many times. And but he was indeed a great, great man. Can anybody else think of examples? I know we've all experienced this type of personality at some point or another. But does anybody have any ideas as to who some well-known people are who might fit this criteria? What? Please don't be shy. It's going to be a very long 2 hours. Some examples of Bill Gates. He created Microsoft, and it was his way or no way at all. And he made sure during his tenure there that everything was done to his standards, and he's definitely reaped the rewards as a result. Martha Stewart, very much the same way. Extremely successful, does things her way. And one of my favorites, General Patton. He didn't follow the status quo. He kind of shook things up a little bit, but he got the job done, and was one of the most successful military leaders in history. Okay, Democratic leaders. These are the people who are more team-oriented. They tend to seek out opinions from their peers and subordinates. It's not that they are indecisive, it's that they generally understand that they've surrounded themselves with subject matter experts in their chosen fields. And so rather than attempt to know everything about everything, they look to their peers and subordinates for input, for opinions, for problem solving. Most of the decisions they make are open for debate at some point or another, whether that's initially or at the end game. They do often seem indecisive to outsiders who don't have skin in the game, so to speak. But it's not a matter of being indecisive. It's a matter of bringing the team together and coming to the best possible conclusion for the issue at hand. They encourage participation. They want people to be invested in the process, and they don't look down on people, I guess, they recognize people for the experience and expertise they bring to the table. One of the cons, this type of leadership style, is peers and subordinates can often see these types of leaders as weak or vulnerable, if you will. So they can sometimes be the subject of power grabs. Somebody sees an opportunity to climb the ladder. They're going to use what they perceive as weakness in an attempt to elevate themselves. And a strong leader is aware of this potential, and they take the steps to protect against it, I guess. Some examples. Well,
I'm going to share another story. And if you guys have examples or stories that you want to tell about your experience with somebody who is a Democratic leader, please jump in. It's not about me and Jean completely on this. Each of these is a brilliant way to lead, and they're all giving and taking. It's not like any one is better than the other. It just is completely different managerial skills and leadership skills. But so the illustrations, or at least the storytelling, to me illustrates it a little bit further than just some characteristics and points, pros and cons, that kind of thing. So I'm going to tell a story about my brother. My brother and his wife have an extremely democratic relationship. And I say that in that no decision is made for either of them, either individually or collectively, without consulting the other. So they very much manage their household and all the decisions in their household that are made together as a team. And it used to drive me absolutely bonkers, because I didn't understand why, if I invited my brother to lunch, he had to check with his wife first. It used to make me nuts. But the truth is that it was extremely respectful, because there's nothing about, he doesn't know all of the plans that are in place necessarily. He might have an idea of what's going on in the household, or with the boy, they have two boys that they're raising together. And anyway, this was a good, 20 years ago, that I was just so like, what the heck? Why does he always have to ask his wife if he can go to lunch with me? Like, it drove me nuts. But hindsight being 2020 and a little bit of personal growth later, I totally understand it, and I completely respect it in a whole new way, because it's very much a democratic leadership style. So that's a good way to look at it.
I think what's neat about this is I've never really honestly thought about leadership styles, so I'm totally loving this. And my business side of my brain is loving it too, because I think that when it comes to speaking American on the not-for-profit side, speaking Canadian on the registered charity side, you'll want certain leadership styles when you join those boards to help organize and run those organizations, and the case in point being a democratic leadership, in my opinion. But also from a business side standpoint, we have so many people in our business community that are growing teams, and the direct sales and the network marketing side. And so it's kind of cool, because you'll know, based on what Jean's sharing, what kind of leader you want to be in certain stages and positions of your business growth. So I'm loving this 100%.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I thought of a perfect example that heretofore hadn't dawned on me, but as a pilot, as the captain of the airplane, I'm the manager of the crew. I have a co-pilot and a flight attendant flying with me. And this is the most effective form of leadership in the cockpit. My crew members may see, hear, smell, or know things that I'm not aware of, and their input can have an immediate impact on the safety of the flight. Just 2 days ago, we were landing in Hyannis, Massachusetts, and I was sitting in the right seat of the cockpit. I was talking on the radios, and my co-pilot was actually flying the airplane. And we had discussed the winds were very gusty. It was extremely turbulent, low ceilings, just generally nasty winter weather, which is not uncommon this time of year. And we were just prior to landing, maybe a mile from the runway, a mile and a half from the runway, about 500 feet above the ground. And the winds were blowing at about 56 knots, which is unusually strong for being that low. So we discussed the potential for what's called wind shear, which is when the wind speed changes suddenly and unexpectedly. Depending on which way the wind is blowing, it can have a extremely, it can cause the wing to stall and basically the airplane falls out of the sky. And we try to avoid that whenever possible.
And I'm always grateful to hear these stories after the fact.
Oh, I've got a bunch of them. But we were discussing the potential for wind shear, and my co-pilot, who was actually flying the airplane at the time, it wasn't on autopilot, he was flying the airplane himself, was telling me what he was feeling in the controls. And with that in mind, we discussed the possibility of conducting what's called a missed approach, which is where we climb up to a safe altitude and go around and try again. And just about the time we were discussing that and thinking that maybe that was the best option, we got a wind shear warning from the airplane, which was a very loud oral voice that comes on and says, wind shear, and really get your attention. So at that point, the decision became clear, and we went around, and Matt did an outstanding job of keeping us off the ground. And we climbed up, talked about what had happened, came back around and landed safely the second time. But the democratic leadership style, like I said, very important in a cockpit environment. In aviation, we call it crew resource management. And it basically is just taking advantage of the resources and the expertise you have available to you within your crew. Because his experiences are different than mine, and he knows things that I don't know, and he's experienced things that I haven't experienced. So individually, we're limited by our own experience, but collectively, we are the sum of our combined experiences. And as a result, when it's managed properly, it enhances the safety of the flight significantly. There are types of dictatorial pilots and authoritarian pilots who want you to get in, sit down, shut up, and not touch anything. And I've flown with several of those. And they may be good pilots in and of themselves, but they're not the type of person who is willing to accept criticism, is willing to accept suggestions. I had a similar experience several years ago flying with my boss into Scottsdale. The approach was unstable. He was too fast. He was too high. Things just weren't lining up, and they weren't as stable as they should be. You know, we operate on the principle of a stabilized approach, which is where we want everything in order long before we get to the runway. So on this particular approach, nothing was stabilized. Everything I can see what you're writing. Everything was being rushed. Everything was last minute. And it finally got to the point where I was uncomfortable with it. So I called for a go around and suggested we go back around and try again and do it a second time. And he refused. I called for a go around 3 times on that approach, and all 3 times he refused. And this is how crashes happen. We touched down on the runway at about 160 knots, which is roughly about 183 miles an hour. Our normal touchdown speed is about 130 miles an hour. So we were extremely fast on a relatively short runway. We landed long, much further down than we normally should. So we had an even shorter amount of runway to stop. And he came within about 150 feet of running off the end of the runway. And we discussed it afterwards briefly, and he knew that he had made a mistake and never did apologize for it, but he knew, and I knew that he knew. And he changed his perspective slightly after that. But that's an example of how an authoritarian leader in the cockpit can get you into trouble. So, with that said, now we'll talk about some examples. There we go. Very famous world leader, civil rights activist, you name it. His style of leadership is the perfect example of democratic style. There we go. Indra Nooyi. Most people hear that name and say, who? She is the CEO of Pepsi Company and is extremely well respected by her peers and subordinates, and is one of the most successful female CEOs in the United States. And President Dwight Eisenhower, who retired as general of the Army in World War II. So you would think that he would tend to be more authoritarian, but in fact, he was not. He was very reliant on his advisors and his subject matter experts, and put them to good use, and was one of the most successful presidents in our history. Next is managerial. These folks are the ones where everything has a place and is in its place. They believe in order and processes, and this is the way it's done, and it's done this way every time, and that's all there is to it. Because they are so rigid and structured, they tend to be very reliable. They're not on time, they're early. If they say they're going to do something, it's done. You don't have to question whether or not it'll happen. They're extremely predictable. Everything, they're pretty much an open book, and what you see is what you get. What am I trying to say? They're very effective leaders doing what they do. They do have a tendency, much like the authoritarian leaders, to stifle creativity and input from peers and subordinates, because they are so regimented. It's not necessarily that it's their way or the highway, but that this is right and this is wrong. And there's no two ways about it. That's just how they do things, and that's what they expect from everybody around them. I'll let you give the example because I don't want to get in trouble with it.
He is a smart man, isn't he? So my mom has a tendency to be a manager, not a tendency. She is a managerial leader. She is the best delegator on the freaking planet. She would sit on the couch all day long and not lift a finger, and everything on her to-do list would get done. It's absolutely magnificent to witness, actually. But one of the things that she does that makes me nuts, of course, I'm going to tell the stories that make me nuts about my family. Why not? But I am a coffee drinker, right? And every once in a while, I put a little creamer in my coffee. Most of the time I don't, but at her house, for some reason, I have a tendency to have creamer in my coffee. When I get a spoon out to stir my coffee, I know I'm going to have another cup of coffee. It's typical. We usually are, sleep deprived, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I'll try to keep this short, but I'll put the spoon upside down on the counter and knowing that I'm coming back for it. And even she knows that I'm coming back for it because we've had this conversation so many friggin' times, it's not even funny. And I will come back maybe 15, 20 minutes later to get a second cup of coffee. She's already put the damn spoon in the dishwasher. It's like, it's almost an OCD behavior, but really it's managerial because that spoon doesn't belong on the counter. That spoon belongs either clean in the drawer or in the dishwasher. So it's a great example of managerial style as far as I'm concerned.
And now you know why I let her share them. But you mentioned delegation, and that is a characteristic of a different type of leadership, and we'll talk about that one next. Some examples of managerial leaders other than my mother-in-law are Sam Walton, founder of Walmart. He was extremely regimented and organized, and he is his legacy is evidence of that effective leadership. Oprah Winfrey also fits this bill. She's also done extremely well for herself using this model. I've spoken with people who've worked for her, and they say without a doubt, they know what they can expect at all times. And there's never any question as to how she wants things done. And there are rules, and that's all there is to it. And lastly, being a Dodgers fan, I had to include one of my idols, Tommy Lasorda, one of the most successful baseball managers in the history of the game. My father was friends with several of the Dodgers in the early 80s at the height of Tommy Lasorda's career, and they used to tell stories about him, and it reminded me a lot of being in the military. Everything was structured, everything had a place, everything worked like clockwork, or there was trouble. So next, we'll get into laissez-faire leadership. And this is tends to be more my style outside the cockpit, especially when it comes to running Facebook groups. I can't do it all. I don't know everything about everything. So I tend to rely on my subject matter experts to fill in the gaps, if you will, and use their expertise to make the group a better place to be. I tend to delegate responsibilities, and you ask what kind of responsibilities are there with running a Facebook group? Well, On the surface, it wouldn't seem like there's a whole lot, but we have to add new members every day. We have to vet new members every day because there are all kinds of spammers and bots and all kinds of people who want into our groups that we don't necessarily want there. So we have to look into that. We have to make sure everybody's playing nice. We have to review complaints from members. We have to approve posts from people who've proven themselves unwilling to follow the rules in the past. It's just a whole lot of little nitnoid things involved in running a successful group. And I can't do it all myself, especially as a professional pilot when I'm out flying 14 hours a day. It doesn't leave a whole lot of time for making sure things run smoothly and everybody's getting along and behaving themselves. So I have a tendency to step back and look at the bigger picture more than the little individual details. And I rely on my moderators to handle the smaller day-to-day items. And, you know, if I have the time and if I see something, of course, I'll step in and do what needs to be doing or do what needs to be done. I can't talk this morning. And, but as a whole, I rely on delegation and trying to oversee the bigger picture and just keep the groups generally moving in the right direction. Getting back to General Patton, one of my favorite quotes from him, and I'm going to botch this, but paraphrasing is, don't tell somebody how to do something. Tell them what to do and let them impress you with their ingenuity. And that is to say, don't be a micromanager. The people I've got helping me run my groups have been doing this a long time. They know what they're doing. They know what I expect of them. They know what our goals are for the group, and they work towards that end. And I don't have to sit there and look over their shoulder and say, no, you did that wrong. Why did you do this way? And you should have done that way. You know, maybe they didn't do it the way I would have done it, but the end result was still the correct one. And I've learned a lot of things by watching people do things differently than I've done. So that's only helps me grow as a leader. I learned different techniques. Same with flying the airplane. Flying with different pilots, I see them do things different ways that never occurred to me. So I observe, good or bad, and you know, take that little bit of knowledge and put it in my back pocket and pull it out when I need it. And that's helped me out countless times, both in the groups and in the cockpit. So it's been a very effective leadership style for me. And it fits my personality. I'm not one to micromanage. I'm not one to think my way or the highway. It's, I don't know how to say it. People do see me as indecisive sometimes, or, you know, that I'm not in control, but that's not true. I just choose my battles. You know, some battles are worth fighting and others don't really concern me all that much. So choosing how and where, when to spend my energy has been a continually refined process, I guess. Back in my 20s, I'd get riled up by the slightest little thing, and you know, I'd spend all kinds of time and energy spinning my wheels and for no reason. The older I get, the more I realize don't sweat the small stuff is pretty sage advice, and there's a lot of small stuff. It's it's been a continuing education, because there are still times, especially in Facebook groups, where there'll be heated conversation and I'll get dragged into it. I'll, get sucked into that energy and find my way into being just another group member and participating in the petty tit for tat arguments that happen occasionally. So realizing what's going on and being able to pull myself out of that is an ongoing process. There are times where I have to step back and realize, hey, I'm not just a group member. People are looking up to me, and I'm setting the example. So I need to step back and regroup and try to set the correct example. And one of Jamie's favorite quotes is, "Be the change you want to see in the world." Not always as easy as it sounds. So I'm getting there. I'm getting there. With that said, does anybody have any examples or can you think of anybody who might fit this type of leadership? This one's kind of a tough one, because you really have to kind of know somebody to understand this type of leader. To an extent, yeah, Richard Branson. It's funny you mentioned him, Cindy, because he is a primary example of the next type of leader we're going to discuss. But yes, he is definitely a delegator and a very successful one. Steve Jobs came up as more of a authoritarian. Or no, was it? I had him on here somewhere. Let's see. I know I mentioned Steve Jobs somewhere. Warren Buffett, President Reagan, and Steve Jobs. There you go. Okay, so that answers your question, Cheryl. And all of these examples are from Google, and I did look into them a little bit, so I didn't just pull names off the internet. But yes, all very effective, laissez-faire leaders. And let's see, the next and last major leadership style is visionary. And this is kind of the exciting one, if you will. These are the people who don't necessarily seek out the spotlight, but who find themselves in it. And they're very high energy, exciting, motivational, empowering, encouraging. They're the ones who get up on a stage with nothing but a spotlight. And they're able to wow a crowd of thousands just by sharing their stories. These are the people who are world leaders who change the world. They are the ones who go out and don't care what other people think of them. They're going to go beat their own path, and the number of followers they have is just unbelievable. The downside of this type of leadership is they can occasionally be viewed as fake, insincere. Sometimes the enthusiasm comes off as just a sales pitch. And there are people who try to capitalize on this style of leadership without actually being this style of leader. And I think that's more the type of person who is viewed that way, because it's very easy to see through the insincerity. The people who are true visionaries aren't concerned with what other people think of them. They do their own thing, and if you like it, great. If you don't, well, good luck to you, and we'll see you on the other side. So I know we can all think of examples of this type of leader. So I'll turn it over to you, and yeah, absolutely. Me?
Anybody else have any?
There are lots of them, and especially right now, they're in the news regularly. Cindy mentioned Richard Branson, and he is definitely a visionary. What he's created and the way he's created it, he's the Pied Piper. There's no other way to put it. He started with an idea, goodness, probably 40 plus years ago. And as the Virgin Group now has their fingers in, I don't know how many different types of industries, and everything they touch, they change. I just saw that they have Virgin Cruises now. And yeah, they have a facility just north of us here in Los Angeles, where they are preparing to launch satellites from a 747. They've got Virgin Galactic, where they're going to start space tourism business. They're just doing all kinds of incredible things. And it's because Richard Branson is a visionary. He sits down with a group of experts and he says, hey, what if we do this? And it doesn't matter how outlandish it is, doesn't matter how impossible it may seem, doesn't matter that nobody's ever done it before. It gets done, and it gets done well. And people take notice and follow him. Elon Musk, very much the same type of personality. He has ideas, seem outlandish, things that have never been done before. Hey, I want to launch a car into space. Okay. And there's now a car somewhere out in space. And I just read that it's still playing Space Odyssey years after it was launched. How they made that happen, I haven't got the first clue. But he did. I don't know why he did it.
Who was the character that Leo played in that movie? He was definitely eccentric.
Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes.
Yeah, a perfect example.
Are you seeing the comments here?
I am. I see Cheryl's, and yes, like I said, they don't care what anybody else thinks of them. These are the people who say, I want to do this. And, they get ridiculed, they get, criticized, and it's water off a duck's back for them. They don't care. It doesn't concern them. Their eyes are on the goal, and that's all they see. And oh yeah, lots. These are probably the most successful types of leaders. They're the most well-known because they're the type of people who change the world. They go out and they make things happen that have never been made before, never happened before. Howard Hughes. Dr. Mae Jemison, a name not a whole lot of people are familiar with, but I've had the opportunity to meet her on several occasions, and she is an absolute visionary. She is not a household name. She's not a multi-billionaire. She doesn't run corporate conglomerates, but she was an NASA astronaut. She's a medical doctor. She's an engineer. She's a professor. She's an author. just an absolutely amazing individual. And to hear her speak is, she deserves to be on that list of names without a doubt. She's just an incredible leader and human being. The things she's accomplished are, most people are satisfied to accomplish just one of the several things she's done. And she's the type of person who wants to go out and do and see more. And you know, okay, I've been an astronaut. Now I want to go be a physician. Been a physician, now I want to go be an engineer. They're just the people who don't take no for an answer, I guess is the best way to sum it up. So those are the 5 major categories of leadership. And I'm sure we've all encountered examples of each. But I saw Erin asked a question. What if I don't identify as any one particular leadership style? Is it possible to be a combination of 2 or more? And the answer is absolutely. Personally, I tend to levitate more towards the laissez-faire / democratic. But absolutely, these are just general definitions, and no one definition can ever fully encapsulate an individual. We're all parts and pieces and sums of our experience. So we've all encountered different types of leadership, and in doing so, we've taken lessons learned from each of those and incorporated those into the way we operate and the way we lead. So it only makes sense that we're a little bit of everything. Okay, so now what? We've defined the leadership styles, and what do you do with it? Well, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So if you want to create an online social media presence, the hardest part is starting it. Going on Facebook, clicking that create group button. It's a simple process, but it can be intimidating. You know, don't know what to expect. You don't know what's going to happen until you do it. So the hard part is doing it. So where do I begin to grow a following? How do I start? Well, there are a variety of social media platforms out there. LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, MeWe, Snapchat, probably a whole bunch of others I've never heard of. My personal experience is mostly dealing with Facebook, so that's what I'm going to discuss here. These lessons, though, are not necessarily exclusive to Facebook. You can hopefully take a little bit from this and apply it to whichever platform you choose to use. And like I said, hopefully you'll get something useful out of this. And if you decide to use another platform, I wish you nothing but the very best. And hopefully you'll come back and share your experience there. And if anybody has any experiences with Pinterest or Twitter or TikTok or who knows what else, please feel free to chime in and let me know, because those are things I'm not familiar with. So I'd love to learn. My daughter loves to tease me about the fact that I have no idea how to use Pinterest or Twitter or TikTok or anything else. So there we go, back into the teacher-student role. So with Facebook in mind, they have 3 different types of groups. They have public, they have closed, and they have secret. A public group is basically general admission. It's open to anybody and everybody. You don't have to be a member of the group to see what's being posted. You don't have to be a member of the group to see who the other members are. You can kind of stand outside and look over the fence and see everything that's going on. They're usually not limited. So if you want to join that group, all you have to do is click join group and bada bing, bada boom, you're a member. As a result, they tend to be very large groups. They tend to have tens of thousands of members. And they're usually fairly loosely moderated, if they're moderated at all. A lot of the ones I've seen, it's romper room and anything goes, and there doesn't seem to be much in the way of adult supervision. For that reason, they tend to be full of bots and spammers and a lot of advertisements and clickbaits, excuse me, and not generally productive places to exchange information. So I tend to stay away from public groups for that reason, because they've proven themselves to be a pretty much a waste of my time. It's just they're places to hang out, and you know, occasionally you might find some good information there, but it's not been my experience. So I tend to, all of my groups are closed, which basically means that you can find them using a search. You can see who the members are, but you can't see the content. You have to apply, or not apply, request to join the group. And I have my groups set so that when you request to join, I have 3 questions that need to be answered. And the reason I do that is A, so I can make sure that the group is the right fit for you, because for whatever reason, aviation tends to attract a lot of interest from a lot of people. And while that's great, our groups are not generic aviation groups. They're all very focused on specific goals and specific topics. So we like to make sure that the members we attract and allow in are in line with those topics and will enhance the membership of the group. And you know, they're not there to just look and share pictures of airplanes. So we have an approval process, and I add in my 2 largest groups. The largest one is 36,000 members right now. The second largest is just under 34,000. I add about 100 new people every week, and I've been using this formula for years with the questions and the vetting the new members, and it's worked extremely well. It's very popular, and our groups are growing exponentially as a result. So that has been the formula that's worked best for me. It seems to be it's the most popular type of group and the most popular formula with the questions. It's kind of a quality control filter, if you will, just to make sure that the people who we're letting in, you can, but most people don't. Jamie said you can have questions on a public group, and that's true. You can have all of the membership options available to closed groups are also available to public groups. But a lot of the times the people who create the public groups aren't really interested in actively moderating their groups. There are a lot of generic subjects, and a lot of buy and sell groups tend to be public. And you know, the people just create the group and put it in a corner and don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. So they don't want to spend time and energy required to go through and look at all the questions and make sure the new members are the type of person you want in that group. It's just kind of a catch-all for anybody that comes. But yes, public groups do have the option if somebody wants to spend the time to filter the new members, they can absolutely do that. But just know that as a public group, anybody and their brother can see everything that's going on in the group without being a member. And I believe Facebook just implemented a change not too long ago that now even non-members can participate and comment. So I'm really kind of perplexed by that one. I don't understand why you even bother having members if you're just going to let anybody participate, whether they're members or not. And for that reason, a lot of public groups are changing to closed groups just to maintain that quality control, because the public groups are starting to get spammed and overrun with advertisements and clickbait, and it's Facebook being Facebook. They solve problems that don't exist, and in doing so create new ones. You're muted.
I don't mean to be just having a conversation with you. What I was saying was Cheryl is saying in the comments that our public group, both of the groups that we are in together, the strategic business group and the Soul Heart Collaboration Retreats group, are public. That said, we have questions that people have to answer in order to become a member, and we have post reviews turned on so that not anybody can post just arbitrarily, or rather that we have to kind of see it and make sure that it is appropriate for our group. That
Right.
said, we're not anywhere near as big as your group, so we're able to monitor at this point. As the group grows and as it gets more engagement and more involvement, we'll probably have to shift that energy to, or we may even want to shift it now to closed, just because.
Yeah.
Interesting. This is very educational. Thank you.
And that's a good point. And I've got a few friends who run or ran public groups and large ones, and they've all gone to the closed format because they don't have the time to approve every post. There's one group that has over 60,000 members that up to a couple of months ago had been public, but Facebook changed the rules and in doing so made things extremely difficult for those administrators. So now it's a closed group, and they turned off the post approval finally, because they were getting hundreds of requests per day for posts, and you don't have the time to manage that sort of thing. It's not reasonable. Erin had a question wondering about folks who don't answer my questions upon requesting to join. How do I get folks to respond that I don't know very well? I've been using the mutual connections and or my intuition vibe to allow them in, even when they don't respond to my questions, but I'd really like to have more input from new members upon entrance. That's an excellent question, and it is one of my pet peeves with Facebook. And I belong to a group that's run by Facebook themselves. It's a support group for admins of large groups, and I can send Jamie the link, and she can put that out if any of you would like to join that group. You do have to be an admin of a group. I don't know what the cutoff is. I think it's 100 members or more.
Yeah, my group is still very small. I think we're at 98 right now. It's only been in effect since October. So it's slow growing.
It'll grow, and this group is a valuable resource, but Facebook is constantly developing new features, and the way they implement them is kind of a mystery to me, because they'll put them out in some groups, but not others. Like my largest group and my largest two groups, I'm sorry, have this option, but smaller groups, which have 10, 15, 20,000 members, still don't have the option. And that option is to decline the membership request with feedback, which is, so sometimes people will answer. I've got, in my largest group, I've got 5 questions, and I've kind of subdivided, because Facebook only allows you 3 questions. So I've subdivided 2 of them into 2 questions. And a lot of times people, when they click join group, they'll only see the first question because they don't realize they have to scroll down to see the other 2 or 3 or 4. So they'll only answer that first one. So when that happens, I can send them feedback that says, you didn't answer the questions. Please be sure to scroll down and answer all the questions so we can consider you for membership. And when I do that, usually within a day or so, they come back and they've answered all the questions. I've been suggesting to Facebook for years that they not even be able to click the join group button until they've answered all the questions and met all the criteria that we set as administrators.
Right.
I know why they've not done that yet. I don't know. The technology is there. It's a very simple process. We have to do it when we accept terms of service. You can't join a website until you click accept terms of service. Well, why can't you apply that same standard to joining new groups? Can't join the group until you answer all the questions.
I wondered about because my group is only for women, and I had a man a few months back request to join, and I did see that option to decline with feedback.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, it just ended up declining it. I never received like another prompt or window. And because this is my first group, I'm still learning all the ins and outs of it. So I was like, well, he's a man, he's not going to be allowed anyway, but I did want to honor that he, had at least tried to get in and to let him know. But I didn't know if there was a step I was missing in, being able to respond. Because some of the folks that come to my group, I know them very well. They don't need to answer my questions because I already know where they're coming from, but it's the new ones, the ones that I don't. So
absolutely. And that's where the questions come in handy. And that's my standing rule is, unless I know somebody personally, they answer the questions, or unless they're invited by somebody I know personally, because my group of friends understand the intent of my groups.
Yes.
And
that's been
they're
what I've
going
been
to
doing
invite
too.
the people who are complimentary and who will benefit from the groups. So if, invited by so-and-so, okay, I'll just approve them, because when somebody's invited by a current member, they get a notification that says, hey, you need to answer the questions. But Facebook's notifications algorithm is such that a notification you received 5 minutes ago may be buried 30 rows down in the notifications. It's counterintuitive the way they do it. And it just makes no sense. And I wish there was a way to filter the notifications by most recent, and maybe there is, and I just haven't found it yet. But I've seen the notifications change as I'm sitting there looking at them. I'll be watching, and this one will go from here to up here and then down here, and it's really kind of wacky the way they do things. Yeah, I've given up trying to make sense of the way Facebook does things. I'll leave it at that. But yes, that decline with feedback option has been huge. And if you have that would be my suggestion, is just come up with maybe a couple of standard blurbs. Thank you for your interest. Unfortunately, you don't meet our criteria, or, we wish you well, and maybe try this group, whatever you want to say, kind of a thanks but no thanks message. Or, hey, you didn't answer our questions. If you wouldn't mind reapplying and making sure that you answer all 3 of the questions, we'd be happy to consider you when you do that.
Okay.
It's just nice to be able to reach out to them and say, I'm not declining you flat out, but I need some more information from you.
Right.
let's see what Cheryl says. There's a group admin. If you invite them, they bypass questions as well. Yes. Yeah. If you as an admin invite somebody, they're automatically added to the group because it's understood that you're not going to add somebody to your own group who doesn't meet your criteria. So that's one of the few places that Facebook has succeeded with common sense. All right, Jamie says I'm running out of time, which is quite shocking considering I had no idea how I was going to fill 2 hours. The last type of group is secret. You can't find it via search. You can't see any of the membership. Unless you know it's there, you'll never see it. These groups tend to be used for more sensitive subject matters as a way of protecting the members from outside eyes. I run one for Army fixed wing pilots, and for security concerns, it's not something that we want readily visible to the general public because, you know, being military, current, former, whatever, we can often be the targets of hacking, stolen identity, you know, spying, any one of a number of things that we really don't want to be involved in. So secret group is a way to protect ourselves while still having a platform to share information and connect with friends and that sort of thing. I've seen other groups that support battered women, abused children, medical conditions, just generally sensitive subjects that, you know, people don't want everybody and their brother knowing they're a part of. The only way to add new members is for the admin or current members to invite them. Otherwise, they'd never know the group existed in the first place. So that's, it's a great way to have a community, but it's not a great way to build a community, if you know what I mean. As you're building a new group, you kind of want it to be visible so that it can attract new members. And secret groups are not really ideal for that. They do serve a purpose, though. So with that in mind, what kind of group focus do you want? There's broad or specific. As I mentioned, public groups tend to be larger and more broad subject matter, like, you know, for example, cars or cats or golf, you know, any kind of a large subject that doesn't require a whole lot of moderation. There's a whole wide variety of topics, you know, and a lot of posts, but very, very few comments per post, generally speaking. And of course, there are exceptions to all of these. Whereas specific groups tend to be smaller. Most of my groups are very specific. They focus on job listings. They focus on career mentorship. They focus on aircraft mechanics, contract pilots. You know, each one has its own specific focus. And as a result, they tend to be smaller, but they also, while they have fewer posts per day, the engagement they have is greater. There's more comments per post. In my larger groups, we average anywhere from 17 to 20,000 active members per day. That means people who are clicking on the groups each day to see what's going on. And they're participating. It's not uncommon for one post to have hundreds of comments. Whereas in a larger, broad topic group, you'll have one post that has 5 or 6 comments usually, but just not a whole lot of engagement. So figuring out what kind of group is best for you, and it's possible you can have a parent group that has the broad topics and then have several smaller specific groups. And that's kind of how we started. We started with the aviation jobs group, and within a matter of about a year, we had spawned off several of the smaller target groups, just because the jobs group was getting so many different types of posts. We realized there was a need for all of these additional focus groups. And that's turned out to be an extremely positive and popular formula. Yeah. So once you figure out what type of group you have or want, the next challenge is creating the content to get it underway and get people involved. And to do that, the easiest way is to stay up to date. Keep your finger on the pulse of whatever your area of focus is. And there's going to be hot topic subjects that come up fairly regularly. So use that as fodder to create new posts and ask questions and try to get people engaged and involved in the group. And you'll find that once they are, and when you create that energy where you're capturing their attention and their interest, they're going to come back, and then they'll start participating. They'll start making posts, and it kind of is a snowball effect from that point forward. And at that point, you just watch what they're discussing and kind of piggyback on that. You know, if somebody in my group is talking about American Airlines is hiring this week, you know, I'll go in and look and I'll see, you know, how many pilots they're looking to hire, and I'll just kind of add on to that. And that in turn generates more conversations and more discussion. The groups, like pretty much everything in life, are cyclical. You know, there's busy periods and then there's lulls, and that's completely normal. And there are times where it seems like nobody sees your group, but they're still there. And Facebook gives you the analytic tools to see how many people are engaging per day and what kind of, you know, all kinds of graphs and charts that can be useful. But another, well, here we go. You can look at popular days, times, who your most active posters are, who the most popular posters are, and what topics they're talking about. How many active members do you typically tag? When do you tag them? I've got a list. And again, you can go onto a page kind of like this one, and it lists your most active posters, and it'll tell you they've created 7 posts, 623 comments, and 1,286 reactions in the last 28 days, or whatever the time. You can choose 28 days or 60 days, I think, or you can set a custom field in there. But you can see the analytics. And for example, this is my career mentorship group. Most popular day of the week is Friday. And I would have to click up here on Friday to tell exactly what time of day is the most popular, but I would imagine it'd tend to be between about 3 and 6 p.m. Here on the West Coast. But with this kind of information in mind, you can create scheduled posts, and you can say, I want this subject to be posted on this day at this time. And in doing that, you'll get the most views and you'll get the most engagement, and people will participate. Okay, you found it, Erin? Okay, yeah, it's in the admin tools section and under growth, and you have to open up half a dozen subfolders to find it, but it's there, and there's a lot of information to be found. So yeah, use analytic tools to see most popular posters and what the topics are, and they'll change as the relevant topics change. The post count or the post subjects will change. Again, schedule your posts ahead of time so to target the most active days and times in your group. so your post gets the most views. I found this to be an extremely useful tool when I want to build the engagement back up. You know, if people are starting to back off and keep to themselves, I'll schedule a post at a specific time, again, usually Friday afternoons. And you know, generally speaking, those posts will get hundreds of comments. As you can see on this post, this was the most popular post for the last 28 days. It had 275 comments, but it was seen by 16,756 individual people. That's not just somebody clicking on it 16,000 times. Those are individual people who viewed that post. So it's that type of thing that we can use to our advantage when it comes to creating content. Susie, what is the best way to generate comments in a group when you as the admin are the primary poster? That's the way my group is set up with my clients. Again, Susie, this would be a perfect example of how to do that. Go into your group analytics page and find the most active time and date and just schedule your posts to, you know, for example, if my groups are most active on Friday afternoons at 6 p.m., I'll go in and schedule a post for 5:45 p.m. on a Friday. And that way the post is up and it's on the top of the page when the most people are going to come see it. It's kind of a strategic planning function, but it works really well to generate lots of comments, lots of interest, and get people to see it. Yeah, you can, Cindy, you can see sex, you can see location, country, city, any one of a number of categories. And it's kind of interesting to take a look at that from time to time.
Just a quick little comment on increasing engagement in your posts. There, and Cheryl, please jump in here if you have any comments as well, because I know that you're really good at this. But one of the things is to have an open-ended question. Like, you know, yes or no responses are not the responses that you're looking to get, because those are just reaction responses. You want, you know, engagement questions. Like, so, you know, tell me the first word that comes to your mind. You know, when you think of beauty, this is for you specifically, Susie. When you think of beauty, what's the first word that comes to mind? Kind of those kind of impromptu or engaging questions that would, right? Things like that.
Well, and share one more tip on that note, 100% agree, because oftentimes I find that we want to tell rather than ask. And so therefore, like, have a good day versus have a good day. What are you doing today to make it good? There's a reason now to engage. But also I find that when I see our stats dropping off, I will post something that's, for the lack of better words, harmless. Show me a picture of your pet. Let's pick the color purple and show me a picture that's on your phone that has purple in it. Tell me what the weather is in your city today, because those posts are, there's no risk involved. There's no vulnerability involved. There's nothing. People will put it's 71 degrees or 13 degrees Celsius or whatever it happens to be. Then the engagement comes up and then you can hit them with the next post, because now they're looking at the group again and you've got their attention for whatever you put secondary.
Absolutely. And that's an excellent point, Cheryl. Facebook, their algorithms use the engagement from the group to determine where they are posted in your feed. So if you have, and you can select in your feed whether you want to see every comment from this group, most relevant comments, comments from friends. There's several different options. And I think the default is most relevant. But the more engagement your groups get, the more often they're going to show up in your members' feeds. So definitely something like that. And people love to participate. They love to be challenged. They love to show what they've had for dinner. They love to show their pets. They love to show where they've been. They, you know, you name it, give them the opportunity to share something and you'll get engagement.
They want to be seen. which I think a lot of, and God love you, Jean, for what you do, because I think that's the biggest issue for me, is that a lot of people want to be seen. So they want to post, but they want someone to validate them too. And
Absolutely.
That becomes the hugest part for me.
Absolutely. And that's really, we'll get to that in a slide here, but yeah, it's encouraging the members to participate, invite them to bring their friends and family and colleagues in, and get them excited about the group, and they'll reward you. This was the growth trend for the last 28 days for my mentorship group. Generally an upward trend, and they are cyclical. We add a bunch and then we lose some, and then we add a bunch and lose some, and that's normal. Best way to grow an audience is word of mouth. That's how all of my groups have grown. I've not really advertised them anywhere. I've just started to in the last 6 months, but we've grown to over 100,000 members total membership, and there are a lot of duplicates in there. So I don't know what our total number of unique individuals is, but probably I would venture a guess in the 70 to 80,000 range. We provide them with a platform, and they in turn provide the content, and that content is what they want to talk about. Like you said, they want to talk about what they want to talk about, but they want to be validated in the process, and we give them the opportunity to do that. And that's all I do. My goal as an admin in all these groups is to sit back and watch. And I've been lucky enough that that's the majority of what I do. Very rarely will I ever have to step in and keep the peace or generate content anymore. I did when I first began, but now it's self-sustaining, and the members have taken the ball and are running with it. Yeah. Jamie's saying I have to set the tone for that, and as administrators, that's what we do. We set the example, we set the rules, we set the tone, and we determine the direction of the group. And our primary job at that point is to keep the group on topic and pointed in the right direction. And we'll get into how to do that. I know she's giving me a hard time because I didn't think I was going to be able to talk for 2 hours, and I'm not. Thank you guys for participating. You're making my job much easier and much more pleasant. Another way to grow audiences, Facebook now has the opportunity to share your group with other groups where, somebody who is looking for aviation groups, for example, and, they've joined one or two, when they search for aviation, my groups will come up. Because, and again, the algorithm determines where you're advertised based on the engagement and the number of members and how active your groups are. But no, yeah, you're not paying for it. They're recommending it. I'm sorry, I should use different terminology. Yes, you can pay to advertise your groups, but I've never done that and won't. But Facebook will recommend your group with your permission, based on how popular it is and how active it is. But what I've done, and it's worked very well, is I've gotten with admins from complementary groups, topics that I don't necessarily cover, but that are in line with my groups. And I said, hey, do you mind if I recommend your group to my group? And in turn, will you do the same for me? And generally speaking, everybody's happy to do that. It's a win-win. And their group grows, my group grows, and the exchange of information happens, and everybody's happy. Well, for example, my mentorship group, we focus on generic aviation career mentorship. Whether you're a pilot, a flight attendant, mechanic, air traffic controller, operations, you name it, any kind of aviation specialty, we've got people in that group who are experts in that field, who are happy and willing to help somebody up and coming to pursue that career field. But one of our more underrepresented facets is air traffic control. They tend to be, secretive is not the right word, but they kind of tend to keep to themselves, and they're not generally overly outgoing social people. And there's a lot of mystery around what they do. So I found another group that was specific to air traffic controllers sharing information with pilots, and pilots sharing information with air traffic controllers, because neither one of us understands what the other one does. And their group is an exchange of information between those two groups. So I got started talking to the administrator who was in my career group, and he said, "Hey, I run this other group. Would you mind if I recommended my group, or recommended your group and my group?" And I thought, hey, that's a great idea. So you have the ability to list recommended groups. So I added his to my list, and it's up on top of the page, and somebody clicks on recommended groups and they get a whole list. And many of them are my other groups, but I do have several that I don't run that are complementary to my own. And I've gotten countless members from doing that because they've done the same for me. So again, win-win in that regard, and you're just building the community and spreading the word for them and for yourself. Another way to grow is to innovate, find things that are new. And that's where that Facebook admin support group really comes in handy, because there's tens of thousands of other large group administrators there. And the variety of topics they discuss are vast. I mean, somebody will come in and say, "Hey, I had this question and I'm not sure what to do with it. And what do you recommend?" And somebody will come in and say, "Well, I had that 2 years ago and this is how I handled it." And they'll just present a variety of options and suggestions. And a lot of times they're things I've never even thought of, but I'll take that and bring it back to my group and implemented it. Things like people love polls. Give them a list of options to choose from, and they're all excited to share their opinions, and they'll tell you all about why theirs is the best. But polls are very popular. We've tried live discussions, and those kind of hit or miss, again, depending on when you decide to do it. Obviously, nobody's going to be there at 3 o'clock in the morning. But, on a Saturday morning or something, providing people with an audio visual forum has proved to be very popular. We've tried it a couple of times in my group, and it's, without it being scheduled in advance, it's kind of hit or miss. But if people know it's coming up and they can put it on their calendars, that tends to be far more successful for obvious reasons, because otherwise you're just catching whoever happens to be online. And Jamie says you're relying on the Facebook algorithm to put it in front of them if they're not already aware of it. So people are constantly coming up with new ways to innovate and try new things, and it's been great. Very popular way to add engagement and growth in your group. Let's see. This is one of my favorite quotes, again, from General Patton. Never fail to honor your people. When a true leader's work is done and his or her aims fulfilled, they should say and believe, "We did this ourselves." And that's really what it is. My groups are not about me. They are the members. We're there for the members. It's their groups. And they've just entrusted me with running it. But in doing so, they've I don't want to call it a fan base because that sounds egotistical and is inaccurate, but it's basically what it is. Like I said, I'll be walking through an airport and somebody will say, hey, you're Gene Bishop. And I'll look at them and feel really bad because I haven't got the first clue who they are. But it's, and like I said, my goal is to be as transparent and wallflowerish as possible in my groups. So I'm not out there seeking the spotlight, but the spotlight finds you. And people come to me, and I probably 20 times a week, I get questions from people I've never met, never interacted with, asking for help, asking for suggestions. And it's really an honor to be trusted that way as a subject matter expert and as a mentor and a teacher. I do my best to live up to that. And it's not always easy. It can be intimidating from time to time. Like when somebody asks you to speak for 2 hours about building Facebook groups. And, the last time I spoke to a large group was when I was 26 years old and bulletproof and speaking to a group of about 3,000 soldiers. So yeah, anyway, moving forward. All right. Jamie's now, okay, now we're getting the music is starting to play in the background. Now I have a growing group. What do I do next? You got to create a moderator team or moderation team, depending on how large your group is. I tried running large groups by myself, and it's difficult because I like to sleep and I have a job, and Facebook is 24/7. So I've built a very small group of highly trusted individuals who share the same goals and who understand what the groups are about. And it's made my life so much easier. The key I've found to running a successful group, though, is defining, presenting, and enforcing clearly written set of rules, and enforcing it fairly, without bias, without favor. And that can be hard to do when it's your friends who are the ones who are breaking the rules. But the people who know me know that, if I take down one of their comments or something, it's not personal, it's me enforcing the rules fairly. Would I have taken that comment down for somebody else? Yes, then it needs to come down for you. And they understand that. I've seen groups that have been run by people who want nothing more than to wield the power, and they're just on power trips, and those groups don't last. They'll kick people out on a whim, and while allowing their friends to get away with the same thing, and that's a recipe for disaster. Erin, is that a relative decision? Meaning, is there a number when it's best to create that team, or just a personal decision based on your own discernment or the group dynamics? It's basically when you're losing sleep and you're sitting there in front of the computer and can't keep your eyes open because you're having to add people or delete posts or whatever. It's entirely personal. For me, that number was about 10,000 for the jobs group. But I've seen groups with 200 or 300 people that have 10 different administrators, and that's what works for them. So it's really entirely up to you. It depends also on where your members are. Some groups have members from all over the world, so their groups are active 24 hours a day. And when that happens, it's important to have moderators who can monitor the group during the times when it's active. If your group is local, based only in your state or your city, maybe you can let it get a little bit larger before you start adding moderators. But if you're getting stressed, if you're finding yourself getting tired of running the group, then by all means, find somebody to help out. And the problem is choosing the moderators, because as I've found, there's never any shortage of people who want to volunteer. They see something that's popular and they want to jump up and get involved. And a lot of the times they have the best of intentions, but sometimes not so much. Sometimes they're just out for that authority and power trip. So I found it's generally best to steer clear from the ones who are jumping up and down and, I want to be a moderator. I want to be a moderator. I tend to look for the people who are quiet, level-headed, the ones who don't seek out the spotlight. They kind of operate in the background and they provide relevant content, but not in a look at me kind of fashion. Jamie's saying choose somebody that's similar to you personality wise, and that's what I've done. With most of my big groups, it's just myself as an administrator and one other moderator. And my one moderator, his name is Chris. He and I are running in parallel, and we're of the same thought process, and we get each other. So it makes my job very, very easy. We've discussed expectations amongst ourselves. We know what the general guidelines are. If there's a problem, we chat about it, and we come to a mutual understanding, mutual agreement. Again, that's the democratic leadership style coming into play. And it's worked very well for us. Maintaining the peace. People are going to get out of hand sometimes. Even in the most laid back, quiet Zen groups, you're going to have personality conflicts. So what do you do about it? How do you handle it? How do you manage it? How do you prevent it? Again, having that clearly defined set of rules makes it so much easier, because if somebody steps out of line, you can refer them back to that rule and say, hey, be respectful, and so on and so forth. What's that? Yeah, I don't tolerate any kind of name calling or.
I said, is one of yours name calling? Because those boys will fling names at each other. It's so funny.
Yep, they can do that somewhere else. So Facebook, thankfully, provides a number of tools that are very useful for keeping people in line and making sure they're all playing nice. Their support group is an outstanding resource. And again, I'll send that to Jamie, and I should have included it here, and I'm sorry for not, but I'll make sure she sends it out in an email afterwards. Keyword alerts, I use those. I've got probably 50 of them in each group, and they send you a notification anytime one of those keywords is mentioned in a post or a comment. And it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to remove that post or comment. It just gives me a notification so I can go take a look and say, okay, yeah, that's fine. One of my keywords is admin, because somebody in a comment will say, hey, the admins don't want you doing this, or ask the admins how to do that, or it's just kind of a trigger for me to take a look and see what's being said. And most of the times it's completely benign and no big deal, and sometimes it's something I need to be aware of. They also have unusual activity alerts, and that's a relatively new feature. You can set the criteria, 10 comments per hour, 50 comments per hour, 20 comments, whatever you want. And when a post meets that threshold, you'll get a notification. Generally speaking, that's not necessarily an indication that something's going wrong. It's just a popular topic and people are getting engaged. Conflict alerts, on the other hand, are fairly useful. That's when, if you have two people that are going back and forth an unusual amount of times, it'll send you a notification saying, hey, these two people are having a discussion with lots of back and forth. It might be indication of a conflict. And again, I'll get a notification. I can take a look and make a determination one way or the other on that. What I rely on heavily in my larger groups is for the members to report things. They can right click on a post or a comment if they don't feel it's in line with the group rules and just report it directly to us as the administrators. We'll get a notice, we'll click on the link and it takes us directly to that comment or post and we can go from there. There are a lot of times when people post things that I personally think are valid, and so I'll not take any action on it. There are also a lot of times when the member who reported it is exactly right, and it's somebody calling names, somebody insulting somebody, somebody posting something irrelevant, inflammatory, you name it. And all I have to do is click remove, and then I can send the person who posted that a note with a link directing them to the rules that were violated. And that's proven to be extremely valuable and useful. And we use that pretty much daily. Yeah. Group post approvals. Cheryl, I think you mentioned that this is what you're doing for your group. It can be very time consuming. As I said, my buddy's group with over 50,000 people had been public and he turned post approvals on, but he was getting hundreds of requests per day and you can't keep up with that. So I tend not to use that. There have been occasions when I've turned it on just for brief periods of time when, the cats start going crazy and you're trying to corral them. Just turning post approvals on gives you a break from the constant member reported issues. And it just gives people time to catch their breath and take a breather and settle down, and then things go back to normal. I turn them off. Yes, you can pre-approve people individually, and but with 36,000 members per group, again, very time consuming to go through the list and click one by one. I wish the opposite was true. I wish that I had the ability to go in and turn on permanent post approval for individuals. Because I've got some members who just don't get it. They post the same thing in several different groups, and sometimes they're relevant in my groups and sometimes they're not. So I don't want to remove them from the group. I don't want to, necessarily punish them because they're not doing it to be, nefarious. They're just, they post these shotgun posts in several different groups and don't stop to think, oh, that's the mentorship group. That doesn't belong there. But sometimes they do have relevant topics to discuss. So it'd just be nice if I could turn on post approval just for that person. The suspend and mute option, I can disable someone's ability to post for 12, 24 hours up to 28 days. I don't use that very often. Just because it stifles engagement, and generally speaking, if somebody's acting up, it's just because they got involved in a tit for tat argument, and people being people. Or having a bad day, or chemically altered state of mind, or whatever. pilots and alcohol, say it's not true. I use this option pretty much daily. If I have to remove a post or comment, I can refer them to the rule that was violated, and add a little note in there as to why it was removed. Generally speaking, it's somebody calling somebody else names. And they know better. They just whatever. I have on occasion removed somebody. They're just not. They want to argue with me. They want to, push the limits. I'll just remove them from the group. I won't ban them or block them, and just say, hey, step out. Think about why you're here, and if you want to come back in, we can discuss that later. That's kind of an attention getter, and it's worked well. I've had a couple of people I've removed, and they'll come back to me a week or two later, say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I should have blah blah blah, and can I come back in? Sure. And last but not least is removal and complete banishment. If somebody's really stepped over the line and committed a cardinal sin, then and they do. This is my least used option, but I'll remove them from the group and block them. And at that point, they can't see the group anymore. They can't find it in a search. They can't request to rejoin. It's I don't like doing that, but there are occasions where it's called for. I'm apologizing for being over time. I started late. So last but not least, we're almost done. Monetizing your group. How do you turn this into something that generates income? I don't know. I've not yet breached this level yet, although we're in the process. It's coming. We're working on creating a website/app right now for all of our aviation groups that gives us the ability to determine content and do away with Facebook algorithms, which will be a welcome relief. Blogs and vlogs are very popular. I've seen a lot of group admins start blogging or vlogging. And for those of you like me who didn't know what a vlog was, it's a video weblog instead of a written one. I
always think of Star Trek, like the vlog, like he's talking into his microphone, but this is just talking into the camera, like star date 6/28.
I always think of Last Man Standing because he always blogs and vlogs can generate income depending on the number of, and that's pretty much true of all of these options, depending on the number of followers you have and the number of engagements. The larger the group, the larger your following, the more likely you are to be able to generate income. Podcasts are very popular for the same reason. YouTube, TikTok channels, and I promised I'd have a special guest come on and talk about TikTok, but apparently we're out of time. Writing a book. Somebody sitting about 23 feet away from me is currently in that process. And you're muted. You're muted.
I said, and you have a 2-time best-selling author in your audience.
See? So I am not the subject matter on that. Migrating your group to your own organic website or app. This is the channel we're taking our groups in, direction we're taking groups in. We hope to have an app that encompasses all of our groups in one kind of one-stop shop. And we'll be able to sell advertising space. We're going to have small annual membership fees. It's very affordable, but just to kind of offset the cost of a website and to get paid for our time, basically. Running these groups takes up a lot of time and energy, and we're getting to the point where it's time to start reaping the rewards of that. That money is not our primary focus, but it is going to be a welcome respite. And lastly, public speaking opportunities. If somebody ever comes to you and says, hey, I've got a retreat online, would you like to talk about, creating Facebook groups for 2 hours? Say yes. Because apparently it's not as hard as I thought it was. That's not true. It was not easy and it was very intimidating, but I'm very glad to have been able to do it.
Great job. Great job.
Thank you. So, and there are lots of, you're limited by your imagination when it comes to taking your ideas and turning them into revenue generating options. It's there again, bring out the visionary in you and don't take no for an answer. See the goal, achieve the goal, and you'll be rewarded. I thought this was a cute meme. Not quite sure I agree with the proportions, because teamwork, respect, and fun are definitely towards the top of the list. But lots of effort, lots of responsibility, and lots of reward come with it as well. Another one of my favorite quotes. And it's true. Running Facebook groups is an effort in being genuine. People are going to see through you if you're fake. They're going to turn you off if they think you're trying to take advantage of them. Be genuine, be true to yourself, focus on your goal, focus on your topic, and the rest will take care of itself. Put forth the effort and you shall be rewarded. Does anybody have any questions about anything?
I think focusing on your audience is the key to growing anything.
Yeah.
And have patience. It's not something that happens overnight. It's something that has this tipping point or trickle effect or ripple effect. That's the word of this that everybody's using in this retreat this weekend, the ripple effect. So just know that it is going to take time, that it is going to, but you climb, and then you get to that tipping point where everything kind of starts to get a little bit easier and a little bit more, I don't know what, just
self-sustaining.
Self-sustaining. That's a great way to put it.
It's
awesome.
The hardest part in building a group is getting started. Finding the members who are going to engage, finding the topics that they're going to be interested in to begin with, and getting it to the point where it just becomes its own engine, and the snowball effect takes over, and it will. It absolutely will. There are so many topics out there, and each one of you has your own specialty and your own passions, and so long as you follow your passions, everything will take care of itself. It's just getting that little ball rolling and getting it to become that snowball. And once it does, you just kind of sit back and you're along for the ride. Absolutely. Consistency is huge.
That is true. And I like that, knowing your time, knowing the day and time that's most effective of your use of time.
Yeah.
Because that is big time. And Cheryl is brilliant at validating the comments and posts that people make on her website.
Definitely.
So thank you, my love. You did awesome. I totally knew you could take 2 hours and then some. So we only have about 35 minutes for lunch. So go ahead and take a nice little breather, get yourself some food, get yourself some sustenance. And if you have not seen the supply list, or if you plan on crafting with me your Feng Shui vision board, you're going to want to go grab those supplies and bring them back to your desk area so that we can get this done. Thank you very much again for jumping in here and creating a very informative presentation. You had several comments that were around the leadership. Everybody loved seeing that leadership in writing. And I think what makes that really important is that when you're monitoring your group, you have so many different personalities to manage, and you have to not take it personally when somebody has a different management style than you. It's just the way that they show up, and that's okay. And they need validation too. We all do, right?
And that's actually, sorry to keep talking. That actually one of the hardest lessons for me to learn was how to separate myself from being a participant in the group, from being a administrator in the group. You know, I had participated in groups long before I ever started running my own. So I came from that participant mind frame where, hey, I'm just another group member. And stepping into that leadership role and setting the example and you know, filtering my responses when people are acting up has been quite an education. It's a process. It's not something that came naturally to me at first. Now it's much easier, you know, to step into that administrator role, and you know, people say things, you know, admins suck, admins are, you know, whatever. Water off a duck's back at this point, but
he's reading my mind, you guys.
It was a process. It did not come easily, but it's important to be able to do that, because once you start getting involved as a member, you lose control as an admin, and now you're setting the example, and now your members are going to key on that, and that's what they're going to focus on, and you kind of have to step back and regain
I was
control.
just going to say, and I've seen you have to backpedal out of that, and it's not easy. It's not easy. So
It's, but you know, people are people.
That's right.
And
You
we're
have
people.
to, yeah, heck yeah.
I am the least perfect individual in this room, and
No
so
comment.
it's- but
He's such
yeah.
a good sport, isn't he, you guys?
Thank you again for having me. It's been wonderful. I didn't think I could do it, but y'all made it easy, and I appreciate each and every one of you for being here.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Go get your lunch, and I'll meet you back here in about 30 minutes, and we'll get this day wrapped up.